All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we have a couple people filtering in as we get started, but just want to make the most of our time together. So I'm just going to kick us off. For those of you I don't know, my name is Audrey Serafin, and I am the director of Spark Boston, which is Mayor Michelle Wu's volunteer civic engagement council for 20 to 35-year-old Bostonians. Thank you so much for being here tonight for a conversation with Boston Public Schools Superintendent Mary Skipper, which is the first of our, in a hopefully long series of events called Back to School, which is sort of focused around educating and informing young adults about Boston Public Schools. I've found, as someone, who is a product of public schools, but doesn't have children, is not an alumni of this particular system. Especially when I started working for the city, BPS is such a huge part of what our city does. And I was so woefully ignorant, about what, all the amazing work that they were doing until I sort of started to get involved and meet young families who were a part of the BPS community. So I, couldn't think of a better way than having our new-ish superintendent, Mary Skipper here. Just a few housekeeping notes before we start. Please do stay on mute. If you are not speaking, just helps us all have clearer audio. And we will be having an opportunity for all of you to ask questions. We might have some questions from our live stream as well. Feel free to add those as they come up in the chat or in the Q&A function. Once you sort of open it up, you can also raise, like in school, you can raise your hand, virtual hand, and we can call on you that way too. So quite a few different ways to engage. But without further ado, I want to introduce the woman of the hour, who is the leading force behind this series, who will be our moderator for this evening. Kristyn Berry is a Spark captain and a Dorchester resident. She's been involved with our program since 2021, where she completed our Begin in Boston introductory program and has become such an incredible leader in our program ever since. And as a young parent in the city, someone who has taught me so much about what that experience is like. And this is just, a small part of it, but I'm so thankful for her leadership on this series. And she is also a founder of Boston, You're My Home, a participatory mapping project that we do. So she's truly wonderful, and couldn't think of a better person to be leading this conversation. So Kristyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for the introduction. So Audrey did a great job introducing this series, so I'll just mention a few other things. So Back to School is a new Spark series of events, as we mentioned, centered around pulling young and emerging professionals into conversations around the realities and possibilities that exist within Boston's education ecosystem. We expect this series to be especially informative for parents or expectant parents of young children, but also other young professionals in the city who just want to understand, to better understand the educational ecosystem in Boston. So I do want to again reinforce this is a new series of events, and we're very open to suggestions and recommendations from the community on how to best share out this information and engage young individuals on these topics in an impactful way. And for our very first event of the series, we are very excited to have Superintendent Mary Skipper come speak with us today. Superintendent Skipper started out her career in education as a Latin and Greek teacher in Boston, working at Boston Latin Academy, and then teaching at Boston College High School. During her time working at BPS, she helped launch the BPS pilot school Tech Boston Academy as the founding school leader, which grew from serving 75 students between grades 9 and 12 to serving a diverse student population of more than 1,000 students between grades 6 and 12. Superintendent Skipper eventually moved on to the role of network superintendent of high schools, where she oversaw 34 high schools serving nearly 20,000 students. And during this time, Boston high schools achieved the lowest dropout rate and the highest graduation rates in BPS history. Following her time at BPS, the superintendent joined Somerville Public Schools, and under her tenure, SPS became a leader in the use of data to inform continuous progress and to ensure a student-centric approach to teaching and learning, driven by a commitment to equitable opportunities and access for all students. So Superintendent Skipper, we are so excited to have you join us this evening, so I'll just pass it over to you.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you to to Audrey, to you, Kristyn, and to the other Spark staff. I'm very happy to be here, and it's as I was saying to you earlier, when I was superintendent in Somerville, where we had a very large millennial population, I just never felt like we had a vehicle to outreach to them, to both give information, but to also invite them into support of the school district. And so it's wonderful to know that Spark exists, and that it can certainly be that vehicle in a way that we can also get a great deal of messaging out. I'm thrilled to be back, here in the role of superintendent in BPS. I think for us, it's really about educational equity. And, our mission is to ensure that in every classroom, in every school, every day, that students are getting access, all students, but particularly those who have been underserved, our Black and Brown children, our special education children, and our multilingual learners who traditionally have been underserved, that they're getting the opportunities that we would want for all of our kids. And that is in the form of educational equity. And so, for me coming back into the superintendency, I'm really, in terms of a vision, laying forward a whole child vision where we see children for what they are, not just an academic need, not just a social emotional, not just a physical, but how all of that comes together in a really magical way, and making sure at the district level that we're supporting that. So I'm thrilled to be here and to be back, and certainly happy to talk about my experience kind of leading up to it. But most importantly, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation and dialogue with our 20 to 35-year-olds in Boston. I'm sorry I'm a little hoarse. I'm not quite sure. I've tried coffee drops and tea, but I'll do my best with my voice.
No worries at all, Superintendent. Thank you again for being here tonight. As you said, I think engaging this young population in the city is really important. So we're really excited that you're also passionate about it and here to engage with us. So thank you again. So we would love to just learn a little bit about what sparked, no pun intended, your interest in the superintendent role at Boston Public Schools.
So, I started off, I always wanted to be a teacher. And because for me in my life, teachers were the most important. And my mom was a single mom, raised me. And she just always really reiterated how important teachers were, and that education was in many ways my opportunity or my ticket, because we didn't have a lot. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't come from a lot of resource. And so she really felt that she wanted me to go to college, but she wasn't sure how to make that happen. And so she felt if I did well in school, that would be an opportunity for me, and for us as a family. And so I started off, knowing I wanted to be a teacher, because I saw the difference teachers made in my life, in inspiring me, in motivating me to want to learn, and supporting me. And so I started off as a teacher in BPS. And then taught at BC High after that, and then came back, and I had a unique opportunity to work in central office, where I got a district view of what support looks like for a size of a district of Boston's magnitude. And then I had the chance to be a principal and to found a school in Tech Boston. And what was really interesting about that was that I was able to do it through the eyes of teachers and students, really as partners in the work of building Tech Boston. And I saw what happened when you thought out of you could think out of the box and really use schooling in a really human way to reach students, to have high expectations and high levels of support. And I had a wonderful decade's worth of experience doing that. And then became, a superintendent, the assistant superintendent for high schools. And I got to apply a lot of what I had learned with my team, with a new team, and now for the 34 high schools in Boston. And I loved every minute of it. I loved being in Boston. I loved working for my community where I've lived and raised a family. But I also realized that as the superintendency came up in Boston, I needed an experience outside of Boston, since that was, for the most part, what I knew. And that's what led me to Somerville, a place where I actually physically grew up. I grew up in the Arlington, Somerville area, and worked there when I was a teenager, grew up there, and went to Tufts, all which was in about a mile radius. And it was during those 7 years that I really got to work on things that as an assistant superintendent, you don't as much, around working with a school committee, governing boards, elected officials, what I would call the village, the business community, nonprofit and philanthropic, to really make happen a vision and a mission. And I had a wonderful 7 years in Somerville, but when the superintendency came up in Boston, and I saw so many good people in the system, and I saw the the difficulty that all the instability of leadership over the last 7 years, it's sort of kind of done to the system, and the negative result it had on staff and the kids. I really felt called or compelled to come back and to try to work with a team to have to stabilize things and to have some success for the students of our city. So I'm really thrilled to be back. I when I think of where we are right now, it brings back a lot of the memories under Dr. Payson, under Dr. Johnson, where we had kind of this alignment of a mayor, who was really committed with resources and vision to the youth of the city, a school committee, a city council willing to work hard to make sure that our youth get what they need. And here, tonight, a village of younger people, but a village of business and philanthropic and nonprofits, all recognizing that our students are the future. They're the future of our city, they're the future of our country, and wanting to work together to make the best opportunities for them. So that's where I kind of find myself now, 5 months almost back into Boston, now in a very different seat, but just as excited, just as hopeful and optimistic about what we're going to be able to accomplish together.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Superintendent. I think it's so compelling to hear you talk about why it was so important to take that Somerville role and then gain that experience and then come back into BPS. I think kind of getting that experience outside of the district too, as you mentioned, must have been really insightful for you. And of course, coming back into the community where you're raising your family is really special. So I just started my older son at Boston Public Schools, and personally, and I'm sure other folks on the line can relate, I find that it can be challenging to determine how to select a school for your child within the city. So I'm wondering, what advice would you give to young families on how to approach the school selection process?
Yeah. So listen, I think in general, choosing schools it can be complicated, right? Because in many ways, it's such an important choice as a parent. And when you have a lot to choose from, the question is how to find the best and most relevant information and how to get a sense of the schools. And in a large district, that can pose extra challenges. I think for us, we have a firm commitment to the families, to have equitable access and to make sure that the schools that they're picking are a good fit for their child. We try to put, as many tools and resources in place in a variety of ways to help families navigate the school choice process. And in our district, we have to consider language access. We have to consider mobility, technology, all different kinds of ways that we can reach family units as they're going through this really important process. Our discoverbps.org is, it's a great starting place, certainly, for learning about your choices in the area of the city in which you live. I think, parents can get kind of a customized list of, based on their home address of what's available for the school choice. Also on the Discover BPS website, they can read the school profiles. They can think about factors that are important to them. And this is like a very personal choice. The distance of the school hours. For many parents, that's a deep consideration. Whether the school offers things like before and after school and what kinds of activities they might have for enrichment. They can even, use the site to really kind of prioritize based on all of those factors and their interests. And then really from there, one of the best things you can do is you narrow your list down, is to really go out and visit the schools, right? And that can be done, reaching out, there's visitation hours, reaching out to the school leaders. But it really is important that to go and see the school, get a feel. We do a large showcase that actually we just had last month that representatives from every one of the schools is there. And we always get, hundreds of families that come as an opportunity to be able to go through and kind of in one spot, be able to make those connections. And I think, it's through that process that you really start to get a feel for what's in your area and what's being offered and meets the criteria that you're looking for. In a choice system like ours, we can't unfortunately guarantee specific assignments, but we do everything we can around the rankings in the top, like kind of the top 3 choices. And, our data from the last set of rounds was like 70% get an assignment, kind of within that top choice. And then up to like 85% get it within the first 3 choices. So we really do try to accommodate as much as we can. It's sometimes a little bit harder, than a district, say, that has neighborhood schools, because there is just so much more to think about and so much more choice. But it is worth the investment, and it's worth looking at our tools and reaching out, even after you've looked through all of that, if you still have questions. I also, just want to say this is an exciting time in BPS. Our enrollment, like in the first round, was well above what it's been for the last several years. And I think that's because people see all of the positive things that are happening in the district and are going to happen with the mayor that we have, with the councils that we have, and and with our central offices and school leaders. We spend just kind of per capita about $28,000, which, compared to other districts around us, is high. And, we also just have, kind of world-class programmatic offerings, like, for instance, international baccalaureate schools, both at the elementary level and at the high school level. We're putting, for the secondary schools, grades 7 to 12, a big emphasis on college and career. And it's is the conjunction, because the idea is that early college will be a part of every high schooler's opportunity and experience, and career exploration, internships, resume building, and experience will also be a part of every high school student's experience. And so we're really trying to kind of build up the menu of offerings, both with what we've been doing and what we will do in the future for our families. We also have nationally recognized schools, not just in the exam schools, but in many of our other schools, certainly our IB programming. We have lots of advanced placements in the older grades, advanced placement courses. And then, even in the younger grades, one of the commitments I'm making is to build up the before and after school programming. So as a way for enrichment that meets both the needs of parents, but also the interests of students. And so talking with students about what they would like to do in their other time, it's different than it was before. And so building up the arts and music, really some amazing offerings there. And going back as early as K0, we're working in partnership with the city around mixed delivery to be able to, meet the mayor's vision of kind of birth, up through cradle to career. And that really is giving more opportunities in a mixed delivery with our community childcare centers and even some of the private ones, as a way to be able to kind of work with the school district so that we ensure that first experience with parents as the first teacher, and then with certainly our mixed delivery system, is as strong as possible. So when students are entering our kindergartens or our K0s and K1s, they are going toward kindergarten readiness. And we know that when students come in and they participate in those kinds of early childhood activities, they are far more likely to go on, succeed in school, and certainly go on to college. So I think, frankly, it's very exciting, even though the journey may take an investment on the parent side. We're here to help and we're here to support. We just created a family and community advancement deputy. because we believe this work is so important to the family and the community to have good, strong communication and good, strong systems to help parents as they enter what I think is one of the most important decisions that they make.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. That was really helpful, I think, just to kind of hear that the scope of opportunities that the district provides. So I guess diving in a little bit to that, and I think as many people on the line know, the state looked to put Boston Public Schools into receivership last year based on a number of challenges that the district has seen over the years. However, the state's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, and BPS reached a partnership agreement until 2025 to address some of the challenges facing BPS. So, you did mention a lot of the opportunities going on right now in the district, but just wondering, what are some examples of what's been going well in schools since that partnership, and what changes can families look forward to moving forward?
Right. So I think, in many ways, so the systemic improvement plan, which is the plan that the city and the district and the state kind of entered into prior to my coming in, the goal of that was to really look deeply in specific areas of the district, to do some auditing and reporting, and then to really make effort to improve those areas. We have partnered with, or we're using the Council of Great City Schools, which is an organization that represents the largest 80 districts in the country. And so they're very steeped in what best practice looks like throughout the nation. And they've done, at this point, some deep reports around safety, school safety, transportation, special education. And then additionally, we've done a strategic plan for our multilingual learners as well. And then additionally also some on our data systems. So in many ways, it's been about kind of lifting the hood of BPS and looking at all aspects. And there's some excellent recommendations that are coming forward in that plan through those reports that myself and my team feels will help us to kind of bring the district into on the next level of quality. That we know parents want, we know students need, and we know staff want. So that is certainly coming. I think, in terms of some of the immediate, what I consider kind of exciting that are coming from this, I think one is around, kind of inclusion and inclusive education strategy. We entered a historic agreement with the teachers union back in the fall. To really help to transform our schools and to really foster an inclusive environment that not only benefits special education students, but also benefits all students. And this is really going to help to lift the quality of instruction and programming for all students in BPS. I think that this particular strategy framework was called out in the council's report. And I think it's really requiring us as a district to rethink, to retrain, to really kind of reconsider how we work as a district. It's requiring us to, look at and ensure that inclusive methods are happening in each of our classrooms. It's asking us to rethink how our assignment process is done, our programming assignment is done as a way to make least restrictive kind of our norm and mindset in the district. I also think that this is welcome news for our parents of students who have an IEP, who have been advocating in many ways for this. It'll open up options for those families from a few schools to all schools as this transformation across the district happens. And while it is true that it will take several years to really kind of create the critical mass, we're working actively on it now in the first 22 schools to go through kind of this inclusive transformation has already begun. It's in the budget and it will be in full throttle for next year. I think it also has a benefit for all students because in order to do an inclusive environment well, you have to make sure that there's strong core instruction happening across the district in every classroom in every school. And that benefits general education students at the same time that that's benefiting peers that may be on an IEP. It's requiring us as a district to look at what we call our multi-tiered of support system, our MTSS system, and make sure in every school that structure is in place, that it's working well, that as students encounter challenge or additional supports, that we're reviewing that at the school level and we're putting those supports in place so that a student doesn't form that gap and that gap gets so big that it really interferes with the student's ability to learn. And that's the inclusion piece. I also think in a very exciting way, and one of the things I heard certainly as coming into the search was access to native language and bilingual education, and really transforming BPS as a multilingual, multicultural district. And so we're hard at work on this, again, in the academic sphere. Interestingly enough, while it is true we've seen, like other urban centers, a decline in overall enrollment, and that's been a national trend, the one population that we're actually seeing an increase in, I think it's pretty exciting, are our students who are multilingual learners. We saw a big uptick over the last 2 years, and we're seeing it again this year as well. So the timing is excellent for us to really be thinking forwardly about multilingual and multicultural education. This will be in the form of some of our expanding bilingual education across additional school sites, which I know for parents is something that they're very excited about. It's also expanding and seeing as an asset base the opportunity to use native language and to have access to native language. It also is investing in the seal of biliteracy and really acknowledging the power of being multilingual and seeing that as a goal and supporting that as students are in high school. It's also strengthening in our family and community engagement, our interpretation and translation services as a way to continue to make sure that our multilingual students and their parents have the ability to communicate and access. Additionally, another thing that, again, kind of from the pandemic, one of the difficult outcomes was literacy in the origin of literacy and foundation of literacy for the average student became more difficult because there were just some things that did not translate well on Zoom. And so students missed building blocks in literacy. So as a district, we sort of kind of put a stake in and said, we're going to make literacy, and in particular equitable literacy, one of the key initiatives that we work on. And so this is really bringing in every classroom, in every school each day, a promise to the community that our students are getting access to grade level content that is linguistically and culturally affirming, so that students see themselves, they feel a sense of belonging, and they're motivated in what they're reading and learning about. And it's important to say grade level because in some districts, the approach with the pandemic was to remediate. And this was not something anyone could remediate themselves out of. When you're missing kind of these building blocks of literacy, which cut across every subject area, math, science, social studies, English, every subject area, you need to be able to read and write and process. If we had just tried to remediate, kids would be missing the actual skills that teachers were attempting to teach. So this is really talking about presenting grade level content and scaffolding so that students who have gaps are getting those additional supports through the form of reading specialists, literacy specialists, even bilingual literacy specialists as they kind of come up. I think one area that I'm very excited about and always have been in my career that I see a deep investment that's been made and that we're continuing with is the work around social justice, social emotional support, restorative justice practice in our district. There had been an investment made with social workers at a time when it needed to happen because what we saw post-pandemic, and we're still seeing, are students that are really struggling with what we would call kind of self-regulation, self-management, peer interaction, and working together, communication skills. And many of our students, in fact, I would say at this point, all of our students from the pandemic have gone through some form of trauma. And so the social workers in particular were an important foundation to add in. But in addition to that, we have to build other tools around this. So we're adding in a peer mediation program as a way to be able to help our young people around conflict and how to work through things. Certainly restorative practice and helping our schools understand what that looks like, doing training in it, and having professionals that can come in and kind of work with staff and students, to further develop this. Partnering with city and city agencies around mental health supports. And that holds true both, I think, at the student level and also at the home level, because we also see that adults, and families suffered in the pandemic as well. And so really like having that bridge of city agencies and district agencies working together around this. Certainly, looking at our safety protocols and making sure, we were just with the Council of Great City Schools, actually, one of the things they complimented us on was our bullying protocols. We put a lot of effort into creating a hotline, into adding in staff who specifically can train teachers around what to look for signs of bullying, and then how to be able to respond to it when in fact bullying is happening, or if peer conflict is happening, what can happen there. And so we put a great deal of, in Succeed Boston, a lot of resource into this, and we will continue to do that as a way to, because I know for parents, this is a big concern. Is my child being bullied or picked on? And if so, will someone see it? If my student reports it, is there an avenue for me or for my child? And so those pieces are in place, and we continue to look at that, evaluate it, see the calls that come into the hotline to make sure that we're putting whatever possible resource we can there. And then I think finally, I would say family and community engagement is one of the areas coming out of the systemic improvement plan. But also, I think just from what I saw coming in and talking with parents during the process, students during the process, and the community at large, was building trust back. I think when you have instability of leadership and you've got a lot of change of personnel, it takes a real toll on the relationship and the trust that is very sacred and kind of has to happen between the transparency of a district and schools and the family and community. And so this is in part why I raised that position to a deputy level with Dr. Tavares, because it's just extremely important that our families and community feel our engagement. It's not going to be perfect at the beginning. We're working hard on this, and it's going to take time, but we're fully committed to being transparent as an organization. A good example is when things happen in the community. Many times parents would hear from the news before they would hear from the district. We've sent out probably about 350 messages specific to communities when things happen. That's important communication between the school leader and between that community to keep that trust that says if something happens, we're going to make sure you hear from us wherever possible, as quickly as possible. And so it's really that kind of commitment, but it's also two directional, right? Multi-directional, which is Green New Deal. We're proposing something that is something that's going to impact our community either by a policy or practice. It's on us to have that conversation, and and to create the table at which family and community can come and they're able to engage in that dialogue, where we can be clear about why we might be making a decision or proposing to make a decision. What is the area that we need and can take the feedback? What might be not an area that's negotiable because of a condition of a building or something that isn't changeable, but really bringing to the community what we can actually take the feedback on. And then most important, having the community see, having the community see that we're serious about taking that feedback and actually translating it into action. And so this is going to be a journey. It took 7 years to kind of dissolve in many ways. So it's going to take a journey to build that back. But we're determined as a team to do that because parents in the community we cannot have a healthy district without it and having that authentic kind of relationship. So really looking forward to that work. So I think inclusion, I think bilingual education, I think equitable literacy, and certainly the family and community engagement. These are all things that I think are coming out of some of the studies we're doing, some of the feedback that we've gotten that are going to make our district a stronger district, a better district, and most importantly, one that can fulfill its commitment to our students and to our parents.
Thank you so much for sharing, Superintendent. So I just have one last question, but then I want to open it up to all of you and to our audience here. But as you know, our Spark Council is specifically focused on engaging 20 to 35-year-olds within the community, many of whom are actually non-parents and non-students. So from your perspective, what can young adults within the Boston community do to engage with the city school system?
Well, the first step would be to say they want to, right? And I love the idea that there's an audience out there that really does. And I think, if you're parents, then really that's plugging into your school. It's plugging into, some of the terrific citywide parent councils that we have. It's, becoming an advocate and being actively involved. But your school is your community, and I think plugging in there and being as involved as you can is a great first step. I think for the district, we're going to be launching several different initiatives that will allow you to become engaged and be able to bring your kind of talents. One is around mentorship. Our young people need mentors. They need, healthy adults that they can see themselves in, that is going to be able to kind of share their journey, be interested in them, can provide healthy examples, can share their, somebody's own struggles, but most importantly, that they can see and care about them, and want to see them succeed. And so we have a variety of mentoring programs. And one of the things we're doing with the business community right now that will kind of intersect, I think, with our 20 to 35-year-olds is we're working closely with the chamber to develop a menu for businesses, and at the business level intersect with the district. Some of that might be having the formal mentoring programs through the business with our young people. It could be sponsoring internships for our young people to see what you do for a living, what is your career, maybe spark or motivate them. They might not have any idea what somebody in a coder does, or what somebody who is a nurse does, or a graphic designer, just a myriad of things. But seeing that and meeting you and having the chance to ask questions about what you do, why you do, how you got involved in it, and what interested you is a great hook for young people to motivate them to do the same. When I was at Tech Boston, I'll never forget, I used to take students to businesses, and I would have students come into usually like the chair room, the committee room. And they would sit at these tables, which look nothing like anything we have certainly in our schools. And they would say, what do I need to do to be sitting in this chair someday? Something they had never thought of, because they were able to participate in, whether that was in a job shadow or an internship, that sparked their idea. And then they made a commitment to doing the things they needed to do as a student and as a young person to kind of get into those positions. So I think there's, lots of things. I think guest speaking is another thing that you can do. You can go in and kids love, students love to see people from the outside come in and talk with them about kind of their journey, what they do, what's different about them, what interests them. That's something that's like very different than what they typically experience. School leaders are very good at organizing this, but through the secondary office, we're going to be organizing mentorship, internship opportunities. Summer jobs is another big one for anybody that's in positions on the call where their business sponsors them or offers them. The mayor's office does a wonderful job with this, of pooling all the resources in those summer jobs. So we have thousands of students each summer who are in a paid position, and they're learning at the same and experiencing at the same time that they're able to make some money. And then I think it's also, if you you can, we're always looking for people to come in and read to students. Each school will kind of, particularly like the K-8s, like they'll have reading days with the community. But any of these things through our family engagement and partnership office, through our secondary office, and then always through the school and the school principal, is always ways that our 20 to 35-year-olds can, in a very hands-on way, get involved.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of folks on the line are really interested to hear some of those ideas, especially around mentorship. I'm going to pass it along to my my teammate Sarah on the line, who's going to read out some questions that we've been getting from the audience.
Great.
Great, thank you both so much. So we've got a couple of great questions here coming from the audience. The first is from Melissa, who is a current Spark Boston member, about the implementation of dress code. So she says, as someone who works at a high school, we are constantly having to address inappropriate dressings from both boys and girls. I can't show up to work in a crop top nor ripped jeans, unfortunately. Could you just talk a little bit about the implementation of dress codes?
Sure. So every school has a process for dress code, which goes through their school site council. Some schools have uniforms, other schools just have like kind of generic language around it. What we talk about is, really kind of like trying to prepare, for the next level jobs, at the high school level. I think, the thing we have to remember is our students come from, lots of different situations. We have Katie's closets in almost all of the schools where there's donated clothing as well. And we try our best, and I think our schools try their best to make sure that our families and our students have access to clothing for school. But, I learned a long time ago that as a high school principal that sometimes you'll see a kid in the same clothing again and again and again, and that might be the only clothing they have. And so what we try to do is engage young people in conversation when it comes to, if the one thing they have is ripped jeans, do they need other access to other clothing, and really have that conversation. But each school does have a dress code process that they undertake, and that is done generally on an annual basis. They revisit that language.
Great, thank you so much. We have another question from Kimberly, who says, I'm curious about how you see the connection between BPS's work in early childhood education and the work that the Mayor's Office of Early Childhood is doing. What kinds of connections or supports are you excited about or hoping for at the intersection of these two areas of education and care?
Yeah, so I really appreciate this question. So this foundation at the beginning is so essential. Every study talks about it and shows it. I think the mayor's vision around starting as early as possible through Kristyn McSwain's office is critical, first off, and honoring the fact we're in a mixed delivery system, right? We're in the ecosystem of Boston, and it is to the school district's advantage and to our family's advantage that ecosystem is as strong as possible with as many options. Where I see a lot of power of connection is around professional development and offering the opportunity for those in mixed delivery and those in the school district to share their practice, to share what they've learned, what their experiences are, to do training together, to really kind of be able to approach it and have that level of seamlessness as students are coming in. I think early intervention and being able to ensure that if a student is in the mixed delivery, that they don't have to wait until they come to the BPS. If we're seeing any kind of a delay that might be happening, whether it be physical or developmental, but that we can kind of get some of those supports in place early. I think having the introduction of families to the BPS as early as possible. So through, for instance, play groups. This is one of the things Kristyn and I have been talking about, and expanding both the variety and the availability of play groups for parents of very 1-2-year-old students, being able to take their child in to the school, being able to have that kind of play group happen, to be able to meet the staff and to really start to kind of forge that connection and feeling of belonging so that when choice comes, they feel attached to something. I think these are kind of all of the ways that we complement each other between mixed delivery of the city side and us. And I think, Kristyn's done phenomenal work with the K1s of kind of getting the students in. And I think we're seeing this in the uptick right now of K1 and K2 registrations, which are much larger than last year. But we're also seeing it in K0. And I think this is really, the power of going to the actual childcare centers and having BPS having that active dialogue that families are like, oh, I know I can go here, I can get this resource here, I know this person here, and it becomes like a flow for them when it comes to the actual choice time. So many ways.
Thank you, Superintendent. So we have another question from Anu, who says, I work at Roxbury Prep Charter School. What can charter schools in Boston do to support BPS and vice versa? In what areas do you see us working together or in parallel to support Boston's children? And I just want to say to everybody on the line, we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible. And we probably won't get to everybody's, but we'll try to squeeze in as many as we can.
Sure. So first of all, I appreciate that. So we have something called the Compact, which is a meeting that I attend, the head of the Charters Association, and then private schools, the Catholic schools attend, and we meet to kind of talk about what are the intersections. So right now we're talking about special education as being a very large intersection across the 3 different types of systems. The reality is our kids are very fluid, right? Like our kids, sometimes you will have kids in a charter and we have the siblings in the public, non-charter public sector, or the cousins or the nephews, right? Like there's this fluidity that happens with our students moving back and forth, depending on where they are in the city. And so it is natural that our communication should be stronger because that's just going to ultimately help our students. There's plenty of examples where the charter in a particular area works really closely with the school in that area. So a good example, when I was principal at Tech Boston, we worked really closely with Codman Academy because Codman Academy is right down the street. Again, we had the kind of sibling and relative situation. We actually, what could have been like kind of tense or like conflict became actually a lot more fluid. And we would invite Codman into some of our things and we would attend some things at Codman. We would talk across the schools. What are we seeing in the area? What are we seeing that's concern in the area that we might need to come together? So we ended up having, like, when kids would walk and we would do dismissals, we would have the admin from both sites kind of in and around the neighborhood. So I think there's lots of creative ways that the local charters can partner with the local schools, but at a district level, I really want to get back into this compact work. It was work that was important to me when I was here 7 years ago. I think with the pandemic, it fell off a bit. But we've had a couple of meetings now, and I think with transportation, this is going to be particularly important as we start to talk about the tiers of timing and how to be able to have a more consistent and reliable transportation system for charters, for us, and for the privates.
So I just want to be cognizant of everybody's time and maybe hand it back over to Kristyn. I know we need to be wrapping up pretty soon.
Yes, Superintendent Skipper. I don't know if you need to leave or if you have time for one more question. Up to you, completely your call. So I want to be.
I'm happy. I can do one more. I unfortunately do, but I am happy to come back. Because I love that. I love the opportunity to just have the dialogue, and I really appreciate the questions. So why don't I do one more?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Sarah, did you want to read one more off?
Sure, yes. So we have a question from Allison, who is hoping that you can address some of the space challenges schools deal with, specifically about upgrading and beautifying to help our kids feel pride in their spaces. I have a little one at JFK School, and their playground and building is out of date. Updating the space is being discussed, but parents and school leadership are ready for next steps because it seriously impacts young people.
Yeah. So this is a really important question. This is sort of, as we think about the Green New Deal, we have an opportunity with a $2 billion injection that I've never seen in all my years at BPS. So to have the mayor, be willing to come to the table with that and to really, I think, advocate for us to move this quickly but thoughtfully. We want to take advantage of that. So I actually just named Del Stanislaus the chief of capital planning, which we'd never had this position in BPS before. And it's primarily to address some of what Allison's talking about, which is how to be able to work with the community, identify the changes that can be made, should be made, and then be able to accelerate. I think, our buildings, about half of them are before World War II. And so some buildings are very small, and by the nature of them, they really can't have an auditorium, a cafeteria, science labs, outside classroom space and gyms. And so I think one of the things we're going to be getting back is a facilities report in the spring, which goes building by building and kind of inventories what is possible to build onto, what is possible to renovate, and which buildings are probably not possible for that to happen. That's going to sort of drive and be at the heart of sort of both our kind of upgrading, renovation, and then in the buildings that we may need to merge, consolidate, so that students can get into a building that really can support the academic programming we all want them to have. That's going to be important community processing conversations. Additionally, there's some buildings that can have renos. And so in those cases, we'll be looking at swing space. How do we get in there and be able to do what we can to the building, to Allison's point, to actually be able to not just beautify it, but also to be able to make it a place where students can have the academic programming we're looking for. So this is going to be, the next couple of years kind of on the front burner. You're going to hear a lot about it. There's going to be a lot of community process to this because it is, it does deserve to be at the table with the community. And at day's end, what we're hoping to have happen and plan in BPS through the Green New Deal is having those kind of sustainable, healthy, beautiful, appropriate for the academic programming spaces that allow us to have the world-class education that we want all of our children to have. So I would say, Allison, stay tuned because you will be seeing a lot in this particular area. And I'm happy, to also have Del come back and talk as we get more deeper into the process.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Superintendent. We really appreciate your time and discussion and answering the many questions. We've had some great questions come through. So thank you again. We will definitely be reaching out to see if we can plan some more time with you in the future.
Absolutely. And again, I really appreciate it. And again, to our parents or future parents, tons of good things happening in BPS, more to come. And I look forward to serving you and your students. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you as well.
So for everyone else, please don't log off just yet. We still have a little bit more time. Thank you all again for being here and for your incredible questions. I'm very sorry that we did not get to all of them, but we will definitely be following up as we can with some of these questions. And we also took note of all the questions that came through, even the ones that were not, that we couldn't actually ask. So again, thank you for all of your engagement and for being here tonight. We do have a very quick Zoom poll that we're going to share right now. So if everyone could just take a few moments to fill it out. Really just like your connection to BPS and then, thinking ahead, what are your interests, thinking of this new series of events? Give you a few moments.
We have like one more person allegedly that has not responded. So I'm going to give it another beat and then we will, I think if I end it, it will tell us the results. All right. I'm going to call it.
Excellent.
Here we go.
Great.
I'll see that. And then Kristyn, I believe you maybe had a few announcements. I don't know if you wanted to share your screen.
Yes, sorry, let me just close out of this. So we do have some upcoming events that we did want to mention. So some are through Spark and some are just through Boston Public Schools as well. So bear with me as I just share my screen real quick. Okay, could everyone see my screen? The eternal question now. So there are some upcoming listening sessions happening for Boston Public Schools. This is around the Green New Deal initiative. You can see more information here. Feel free to grab a screenshot of this as well. So a few events coming up. Monday, February 27th, 6:30 p.m. This is an in-person event at New Mission High School. And then Thursday, March 2nd, 5:30 to 7 p.m. This one's on Zoom. And then we have a few sessions that are going to be in Spanish. So Tuesday, February 21st, 5:30 to 7 at East Boston High School. And then Monday, March 6th, 5:30 to 7, Zoom once again. And I will be sharing links to actually sign up to these events right after I stop sharing my screen. Some BPS budget meetings also occurring, and these are open to the public and all via Zoom. I won't read out these dates, but there are several happening over the next couple of weeks and also into next month. And then really excited to provide the save the date. A big shout out to our Spark alum Athena on the call who helped us organize this. So we will be partnering with Boston Public Schools to have a budget session Wednesday, March 8th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So to get your questions answered on how budget works in Boston Public Schools, a little bit more background on that and get to ask questions with the team. This is going to be in person in Roxbury at the Bowling Municipal Building, which is the headquarters for Boston Public Schools. So that would be a perfect location for this event. And then last but not least, we actually have a Spark book club that happens about once a month or so. So this event is coming soon. It will be happening in late March, location to be decided. And we're doing a Spark Book Club Back to School series crossover event. We're going to be reading Common Ground, the cover right here, A Turbulent Decade in the Lives of Three American Families, which really touches upon the education system within Boston. So a really good read. If you do want to start reading, you don't have to have read it to attend. Also, if you read it in the past and just want to be present for the conversation, that's totally fine too. But there are plenty of copies available through Boston Public Library. So I'm going to stop sharing and just share a couple of links in the chat.
And while Kristyn is doing that, just because we don't have the linking capabilities over on Facebook, but we will be sharing more information there. I'm just going to say good night to our live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry for the delay and the technical difficulties, but I appreciate you hanging in. And I also wanted to let folks know if they are interested in that Common Ground book, that it is a little bit lengthy, so definitely recommend starting to read sooner rather than later. I am guilty of having it on my nightstand and not having started it right now, but don't be like me, start reading now.
And I just shared the two links. One is to a calendar of the budget sessions happening through BPS, and the other is where to sign up for the Green New Deal sessions coming up. So feel free to grab those links or open them up real quick before we close out. Thank you all again for being here tonight.
And thank you, Kristyn, for leading us through this conversation. Thank you to Sarah and Liza, who are in the chat and helping us keep everything organized. To our Spark council members and alumni line, you all help make this work possible. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope to see you all, whether virtually or in person, at a back to school or other Spark events soon. So stay tuned, follow us on social media, all that good stuff. And we'll see you around Boston real soon. Thanks so much, everybody.